Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP, and today's topic, which should be a magnificent podcast today, is called Black Music Month, The Magnificence, because Black music is magnificence. Not talking about perfection. It's not about trying to be perfect of every single thing in Black music, but it's about reflection of the greatness of Black music, and this being Black Music Month. Since there are numbers of personnel who know the power of Black music and its influence, but relating to Black music, there are people who want to show non-constructive versions of what has been shown as Black music in its present time. Let me just read you. Let me just read you something. What is called the importance of music to George Washington. Okay, it's called the importance of music to George Washington. How he talks about how when the White House is completed around about 1800, how George Washington and his wife Martha, how they lived in New York City and Philadelphia and some other places, and how they enjoyed the theater and how they liked to dance. And also gave him great pleasure at his inaugural ball because he loved dancing, he loved music. And that was one of the main things at their residence was about music. And one of the things they had at the inaugural ball was his what was her name is? Oh, Nellie Custis, which was the basically step granddaughter. And at the inaugural ball, she played various instruments that was bought for her. And one of the things was this kind of piano and a harpsichord, and how they knew the importance of musical instruments and were the first earliest items purchased at their house, and illustrate the importance of music played in early American home life. I say that because it shows you how the importance of music in this society is. So now, just some things about our Power Pack speaker. He is the author of some great books. One of them is called The Beatles, The Rolling Stones, and the Power of Black Music. Another one of his books is called Hip Hop Collectathon, an anthology of philosophies, facts, opinions, ideals, music, art, history, and culture from various perspective collections. On Amazon, for the individuals, book clubs, education facilities that could be interested in looking further into his books, there is a look inside part of reviewing some pages of his book for free. The book cover itself, the front and back, I can assure you is worth taking a look at just for that. He has a wealth of musical knowledge in theater. He has written, produced, and directed plays, including a movie as a filmmaker. Just a professorship of knowledge. Our speaker, we're going to talk to a little bit, in my opinion, is a type of humble person with great knowledge that should even be more known, and hopefully in the near future, more personnel will be asking to have him speak with the groups or the organizations or social media, etc. Believe me, almost guarantee they will be impressed. So, with no more further ado, let me introduce and welcome to the Real CP Show, Professor Armstrong.
Hello, thank
What's, go-
you,
what's going on,
Dr.
Professor?
Chris.
How
Oh
you
man,
doing, sir?
I'm fine, man. It's all about that Black Music Month. Hey, I'm great. I'm doing fine, man.
All right,
Glad
sir.
to glad to be here, still in the land of the living. So hey,
Yes,
I'm,
sir. Yes,
I'm
sir.
great, bro.
All right, appreciate it. Let's go and get into it. So, since it's been Black Music Month, this magnificence, would you go ahead and talk about the Black music, or I say Power Month, the historicalness, and why it's still extremely important to continue to keep this in the forefront of our conversations?
Well, Black music in particular is the most American of all music because Black music kind of proliferated around the world. The ideal of Americanism through music. So when I say it's the most popular form of music throughout the world, it's the only music that travels from country to country or from continent to continent that comes out of anywhere. And that includes, I would even say, reggae. because I would say the Americas, not just United States, but we got music come from Central America, the Caribbean, or South America that also, or even Canada, that would also be black music coming out of the Americas, black music,
Mhm.
and the thrust of the main thrust of the pulse that comes from black music, I would say it is the syncopated rhythms of Africa, polyrhythmic rhythms of Africa, but the way that they were interpreted in this country when the Africans were brought here, they came out a different way because this was music under oppression.
Mm.
So no other music that came out sounding like the music here that black people produce. Whether we go back to the Negro spirituals, jazz, blues, uh, funk, rhythm and blues, soul, rock and roll, country and western, it does not matter. It all comes out the way it does because of the experience we had in this country. So black music is by far the longest running commodity produced in the Americas by black people, actually. It
Mm.
outdates anything else, and that's a
Outdates.
fact.
It outdates any other. What now? I'm sorry.
Any other commodity that's been produced, it outlives, outdates it because it's been the continuum of what's
Mm.
being produced. If we talk about forms of technology, if we talk about creations, black music is the longest running creation, has been in existence for the longest period of time, produced by any people in the Americas.
Well,
Not
thank.
just black people, any people.
Oh,
It goes. It's been around longer than textile and cotton. Shit.
it
I
goes
mean,
back that far.
yes, sir.
All right. So let me at this particular moment. So could you talk about how Black Music Month came in existence?
Yeah, actually, the President Jimmy Carter in 1979, he signed it into some kind of a magistrate or some type of, I guess you could say, a bill of some sort
Hmm.
that declared June as Black Music Month. Now, this is 1979. This is before you get June for Pride Month. This is before you get any other month happening. Anything else you want to throw that they've added to June. It's before all of that. So essentially, the president of the United States at the time, Jimmy Carter in 1979, that's how it came about. I mean, his love for black music. He was from Georgia. You
Mm.
know, a lot of our black powerhouses come out of Georgia. Georgia has a rich history of black music. I mean, if we talking about James Brown, if we're talking about Ray Charles, if we talking about Otis Redding,
Hmm.
and so many others. I mean, we could just go down the list. Georgia has so many brilliant musicians and artists that came out. So I guess he just loved black music and he decided he would do that.
So,
Him being a white man, I thought it was unique.
so why do you think, in your professional opinion, that it took so long to be at least to be initially recognized?
Well, I think it was always recognized. I think black music has been recognized since the turn of the century, since slavery, actually. I
Mm.
think I think this was just a formal
Hmm.
recognition, and other presidents, I'm sure, were listening to different forms of black music. If you go back and you count since the inception of the presidency, if you want to go with George Washington, or people want to go even before him, but I think that that's something that he wanted to do. I mean, he was like, again, he was a Southern guy from Georgia, and a good Southern guy. He had this deep respect for black people and what is called black culture, and I think that was just something he wanted to do. Because that's not to say that Nixon or Kennedy or Johnson or Ford or any of those people. I'm sure all those people listened to black music of some form. You
Hmm.
know, Nixon was a big fan of Sammy Davis Jr. Uh,
Mm.
and he liked jazz, so he could have did it. But it's just Jimmy Carter. I guess he thought it would. He was making new ground and good for race relations too. I guess that's what he saw. Because this is before you get Dr. King's Holiday. But again, we don't take off for Black Music Month. You acknowledge it the whole month. So that means it's a continuum. From the first day to the last day, you acknowledge black music. So that opens up the door for many things to happen during the month, be it festivals, concert, lectures, special celebrations of different genres of black music. Doesn't matter. So by him doing that, it opened up a wealth or a huge bouquet powerful music discussion than anything else that could take place. So
Someone is wondering how before that, around that time, how many people were not too happy about that to to have Black History Month formally be recognized.
Black History Month?
I'm
You
sorry,
mean
not
black
Black History
black
Month. I'm
music?
thinking
I
because
don't
that's the
I don't
same.
think a lot of people even knew. I
Mhm,
mean, Black Music Month. I don't think a lot of people even knew unless they were just really paying attention to what was being on the news media, because it
mhm,
was all over the news when he did in '79. I was still in, like what, eighth grade or something,
mhm,
but I knew it was Black Music Month. And um, I saw it on Ebony magazine and Jet, a couple other publications when June would hit, they would, it's Black Music Month. So you would see it. I don't know. I guess white people that chose to in the mainstream acknowledged it, or probably maybe people like Merv Griffin who had shows on TV at the time, Johnny Carson. Perhaps that month in particular, they might have showed or had different guests or more saturated themselves with more black guests than normal just for the month of June. I'm thinking, you know because this is after Ed Sullivan show is no longer on. So I'm thinking that being in the eighth grade at the time, I really can't say I was covering everything, but I do remember it's being on the cover of magazines, and it would be highlighted in newspapers. I do remember that.
so as you was growing up, what type of music did you listen to?
Oh man, just like everybody else, bro. I came up gospel, soul, R&B,
Hmm.
funk, reggae, jazz, blues,
Hmm.
um, you name it, man. Hip hop. I mean, I
Hmm.
listen to a wide range of all forms of black music, rock and roll, all forms, some country, but at that time I didn't know that country was actually ours until I did my own research later on. But I mean, you name it, man. Ska, which was coming out of Jamaica, but when it went to England, ska in England was more new wave because they fused ska from Jamaica with punk rock.
Hmm.
And so it took on a whole new, groups like the Selector, the Specials, English Beat, took on a whole different kind of flavor.
Hmm.
So, that's kind of that's where I was coming from.
Okay.
And so I embraced all forms of black music,
Okay. Uh,
essentially.
essentially.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, if it was all forms.
Okay.
I didn't. There's not, black folk music. Odetta, Lead Belly. Whoever.
Hmm.
I mean, black music. Hey, you can't lose it, so you got to use it. So give me that good old black music.
Uh
You know.
oh. Well, I say that point because like in black, even like current times, how you still have personnel that still really don't like talking about Black, History Month and what's the purpose of that. And I would probably think there are quite a number of people who probably had some of the same feelings because when we look at Black Music Month now, it seems to be that other different agendas or movements overall have kind of have been allowed to filter out the showcasing of Black Music Month.
Okay, when you say filter out, what do you mean exactly?
That not necessarily being shown around many parts of media, um, and just can be radio overall. I'm not talking about like bits and pieces I've seen here and there a little bit. What's supposed to be black owned media, bits and pieces. I'm talking about an overallness of how they compare to other movements that's been showcased a lot more. Even I don't want to go talk about the Juneteenth now, but it seems like even though it's Black Music Month, which is greatness, it hasn't been like just showcased overall. It's like it's just kind of been muted a lot more.
Well, it might be because we're coming off a pandemic, and it
Hmm.
could be also because of the climate of all the social tension and social unjust and all those things. Because normally, if you go back and look at years back, we didn't have all this going on. So it could be that stuff eclipsing. You just got a new president
Hmm.
in the White House. Your Juneteenth um, was signed into a national holiday, which it has its own music base. Lift every voice and sing. It
Hmm.
would be the ultimate Juneteenth song, And
Hmm.
so I would think stuff like that is the reason why. In my opinion, that's why it's not just. And if we as a people are not promoting it in particularly, then that's kind of on us too.
Mm.
You know.
Mm.
So more
Okay.
more so than white media. If black media is not pushing it, if they're pushing some other agenda as opposed to the black music agenda, then so be it.
Right.
And
Oh, go ahead.
and
Go ahead.
so
Go ahead, sir.
so I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay. No, just by the way, just kind of going somewhere. When you brought up uh, "Lift Every Voice," can you talk about that?
Yeah, James Weldon Johnson and his brother, one wrote the lyrics and the other one played the music.
Hmm.
It's just that the so-called Negro national anthem or the Black national anthem. It came around and the song just tells the story of our legacy in this country. We used to have to learn that. When I was little, we had to sing that in class. In school, we used to sing that like the morning devotion. Just like God Bless America, whatever, we would also sing, lift your voice and sing along with the pledge. It was guaranteed. I went to a predominantly black elementary school, so that was just part of your, I would say, your indoctrination was to sing and learn and know, lift your voice and sing.
Hmm.
And it's an essential song. It's a song that everybody black, if you don't know it, know the words, you should at least know of it, and know what it sounds like.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, because it's important. It's like it also shows that we're a nation within a nation. Black people are a nation within a nation. That's why we have that. If we were all just one people in America, you would need a Negro national anthem or a Black national anthem
Mm.
because the anthem that has been given to the nation would recognize you for who you are. But
Very.
as the Weldon brothers, Johnson brothers, James Weldon Johnson, his brother, they had to show. We had to come up with our own, as usual.
Mm. So that's a major point. I was reading something. It's called the top genres in the music industry.
Okay.
The top three is pop, hip hop, rap, and rock.
Wait a minute,
So,
wait a minute. You said hip hop and then you said rap and rock. That's the same thing.
well, it just says
Rap
top three is pop, hip hop. I guess they're talking about top pop, hip hop, and I guess sorry about
and
that.
rock.
Pop,
Okay.
hip hop, which
And rock.
slash rap, same concept, and rock. Those three
Okay.
on that. And so it's like the parent black influence, and all. It's like obviously what should be the parent black influence on all three. But it seems like
Okay.
there's like numbers of people that act like they don't want to see the black influence on that.
My
Now, I'm not
lord.
necessarily talking about hip hop or rap. I'm not necessarily talking about that quite yet on that part, but especially like the pop part and the rock. But it's kind of interesting how the top genres in the music industry are pop, hip hop, no slash rap, and rock on that. But especially with the rock and roll, right? It's like that's the top genre is being part of rock and roll. Now, in your book, The Beatles, Rolling Stones, The Power of Black Music, rock and roll. It says talks about how without blacks there is no black music relating to rock and roll
Oh,
on
without
that.
without without black people, there's no rock and roll music. You mean?
Where I said without blacks there is no black music.
Well, that's all. There's no rock and roll. You mean?
Okay.
There's no rock and roll music. No, there's no black music, obviously, because all forms of black music come from black people. But
Mm-hmm.
if you say without black people, there's no rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a true statement because rock and roll comes from black people. Even the term rock and roll was used in black inner city environments, as a kind of like a metaphor for a guy and his girl going to go get it on in the backseat of a car.
Mm.
It was just black slang basically. And pop, I think it's putting up. There's to me, there's no such thing as pop music.
Mm-hmm.
Pop music just means it's popular. It
Mm.
doesn't matter what genre it is. It's like a country singer, a blues singer can hit the pop charts. The Thrill Is Gone by B.B. King is blues. It
Mm-hmm.
could be on the pop charts.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could have a song by a song by TLC. Uh, what about your friends, which is more of an R&B track,
Mm-hmm.
with a hip hop when you got left out rapping, and that can be a pop song. Then you turn around Justin Timberlake in 98 Degrees, that can be pop because pop just means it's popular. And it was created by two white guys. I can't think of their name right now, but two white dudes came up with pop. Initially, I felt that giving them calling music pop was a way to keep certain white artists from being called rhythm and blues or soul, to
Mm-hmm.
try to create, just put a lid on it. Let's call it pop. So we won't be calling these white people
Mm-hmm.
saying they're doing black music, which they still are. So I think that was like a savior for certain white artists to kind of, like Madonna. Madonna does black music, but they call her pop.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson was called the king of pop because he did all types of music, all types of black music. He incorporated soul, R&B, rock and roll, funk, uh, urban contemporary, whatever that is, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got to watch how they kind of there's always blurred lines when people
Mm-hmm.
start coming up with these categories, and you got to look at why and who's behind it a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, it's
uh,
like, mm-hmm.
popular just means it's popular. Prince dominated popular music. Pop just means it's popular music. It's not really a genre to me. It just means it's popular. And when you focus on whatever they're talking about, you find out that that song belongs to some genre. If we talk about the Korean group, they might hit the pop charts, BTS or whatever. Well, they're just doing a modern form of R&B, and
Mm-hmm.
that from Korea. That's all. Still black music.
Mm-hmm.
You got an Asian. It's got a Korean face this time. Okay, so what? They're
Right, and that's the whole.
pulling from the same base.
Mm-hmm. And it's like that's really not necessarily being talked about even enough. But relating to that, the rock and roll, I guess I like bring that up in that particular category, since still, when for most people, when they think rock and roll, most they just don't associate rock and roll having uh, black influence. It just seems like my opinion on that. I'm pretty sure some other people, because it just seemed like when I'm out and about, I see certain things, and somebody has this shirt on, that shirt from this group, or a singular or group rock and roll. It just seemed like it's like the way that people are talking or the way it comes across, and in the war shows or different places. It's like rock and roll is just not associated with black on that. So I find it interesting because I hear said the best rock bands of all time, 2021, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And let me just look at for a second, kind of going back with your book, your powerful book about the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the power of black music, on that, and even some of these other personnel that you are extra super knowledgeable on. But it has number one. I'm just going to say the top 10 right quick. Queen,
Okay.
Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
Number three, the Beatles,
Okay.
Pink Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
Jimi Hendrix,
Okay.
AC/DC.
Okay.
Number seven, the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
Number eight, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Okay.
Number nine, Black Sabbath.
Okay.
And number 10, the Eagles.
Okay. And I understand why that list exists. First of all, that's done by design. Number two is some white guys put that list together. I can just tell who we have on it.
Okay.
And again, it goes back to who's the author. If white people are controlling the narrative on rock and roll, then it's going to always come out white. It's that
Mm-hmm.
simple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have a group of black guys saying, hey, here's the list of the greatest rock bands. That list probably would have Funkadelic on it. It might have Sly and the Family Stone. It might have Prince and the Revolution on it. There's a whole
Mm-hmm.
lot of other people that might be on it. Fishbone might be on it. I mean, and also I could tell, but that had a bias just by the white groups you have on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Stones are more rhythm and blues style rock, and so is Led Zeppelin, and so is the Beatles. Okay, you said AC/DC,
Yes,
and
sir.
you said Black Sabbath. Come on, man, really?
Well, if
I
you
mean, but if those are white guys putting that list together, then they're gonna make sure that it's gonna be a colonized list, basically.
Hmm.
Colonialism rock. It's gonna have white faces because white people put it
Hmm.
together. I mean, I understand that.
Well, that's what I think about your book about those top 10. You see the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
Yes, sir.
So it's interesting how someone will look at that list, either of not knowing, because it's very few in this.
Well, everybody on that list takes something from black people, though.
That's why I'm
Everybody,
going.
everybody you said on that Pink Floyd too.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if I say Pink Floyd, well, who comes to mind? Pink Anderson and Floyd Council, two black men from Georgia. That's how Pink Floyd got the name Pink Floyd. They took Pink Anderson's name, part of his name. They took Floyd Council's part of his name, put together. You got Pink Floyd. You know,
Mm.
AC/DC. Well, Bon Scott, the lead vocal from AC/DC, who influenced them? What is his singing style? Who was he trying to sound like? Little Richard. I could rip that apart and show you how black it is, even with all those white people
Mm.
that's on that list because I know the music. But again, I understand why they did that. Again, you have a group of white guys. They said, and they said, well, we're gonna colonize rock and roll. So they made it there. So they throw out the token Jimi Hendrix, the electric nigger dandy that a lot of white people use.
Hmm.
Pretty much, that's how they
Hmm.
pretty much see him.
Hmm.
So they stick him out there. Jimi Hendrix in the experience. We had the two white guys, with the big afros playing in the group too. So I mean, that's cool. I love Hendrix. I love the experience. Great band. For three people, what they were able to produce, amazing.
So,
But I mean, I understand. I mean, it's not an argument with me because I understand that white people put that list together. And I
hmm,
understand a lot of time black people have been trained not to see rock and roll as part of us.
hmm,
We've been conditioned, right? Black radio really never played black rock artists. Okay, you hear white rock artists on there. You might hear David Bowie. You might hear the Stones. You might hear Elton John. But for the most part, they created the white people that control the mediums of radio, A&R people.
hmm.
They separated, they created, well, we're going to take this black music called rock and roll and we're going to colonize it more and make it more white like for white people. So that's what they did.
Hmm.
Like Little Richard say, oh, he stole my music. Like he be saying, all that stuff is true, man.
All
May
right.
he rest in peace. One of the kings of rock and roll.
Well,
Chuck Berry, same thing. I
hmm,
mean, Fats Domino, Bo Diddley, Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson. I go down the list naming all the kings. So,
which is interesting because they're not even in the top 20
well, they're
either.
not going to be in that because they come from those groups have lasted different decades and periods. I get that. They didn't say in the history, they say the greatest band. So none of those guys, Chuck Berry, those are individuals. But they're not going to put a black band like Sly and the Family Stone or Prince and the Revolution or Fishbone on there anyway. Because again, it's done by white people, mainly white males, deciding who's going to be on their list. If I did one, it won't look like that,
Mm.
you
Hmm.
know. So that's a matter of who's doing it,
So, match
you
you
know.
because in that top 10. So, again, for you to write this kind of book, The Beatles and Rolling Stones, The Power of Black Music, could you kind of go over some of the things about your book and why did you decide to write that book and specifically have the Beatles and the Rolling Stones?
Well, I chose them because by far they're the greatest
Mm.
two rock bands probably in the history of popular music. And they carried black music. They evolved it to a different level. Now, and they were never ashamed or embarrassed about it. And
Right.
I just, I wanted to know why I liked the Beatles and the Stones. And when I did research, I found out that they were just imitating my ancestors and copied my ancestors. And then I understood why I like them. And then their honesty in the books. And the Rolling Stones have been the longest, the biggest, and longest running ambassadors for black music, more so than anybody. I mean, they've always, embraced it, acknowledged it, shown it. And I wrote it for that because I like both of those British groups and they're British white people, but I love their music because it's essentially black music.
Hmm.
It's black music done through white British people. I could
Okay.
say the same thing with Culture Club or Simply Red, or I could say Amy Winehouse, I could say Josh Stone, I could say Yaz, YZ, the group Yaz. I mean, I go down the list with
Mm.
just black music coming through the voices of British white people. I mean, that's always been a known fact. Same thing, you know, Australia, you get Jamiroquai. I mean, it's across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the poets of rhythm coming from Germany, James Brown, you know, German James Brown people. You know, hey, there you go. So I
Okay.
wrote it because I just, you know, I like the music, obviously. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to make the correlation because no one had written a book like that and nobody had connected the dots. So I decided I would.
It takes a very confident person to do that kind of book and put Black influence on there.
Well, if you stand in your truth, that's all it is. I mean, I'm just standing in truth. I stand by what I say. I can prove it in and out, up and down, all around. I mean, it's just, there's no doubt about it. It's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just I just did what the ancestors would have wanted me to do. And then if you go listen to the Beatles music, you go listen to Rolling Stones music, like I tell black people that've got the book, white people, you can't deny it. Go listen to their songs. Listen to early music. Listen to a lot of music. I mean, Harlem Shuffle, Miss You. I mean, I can go down the list. The
Mm-hmm.
Beatles, you know, and Shake, Twist, and Shout. Um, you go back and
Blackbird.
listen
How
to
about Blackbird?
Blackbird. I mean, it's just a lot of your songs. Lady Madonna has when the Beatles did Lady Madonna, they're pulling that influence from the great Fats Domino. Doom, doom, with the piano, doom, 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 Lady Madonna. It's a Fats Domino riff, kind of a boogie woogie thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's in the music. And Chuck back in the USSR when they do that, that's Chuck Berry. Roll over
Mm-hmm.
Beethoven, that's Chuck Berry. I mean, I can name, man, I can go down the list. Is this black music? That's all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's simple.
Now,
Yeah.
what do you think about Louis Jordan?
By far one of the most influential people in popular music in the history of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who didn't take from Louis Jordan? Everybody: James Brown, Chuck Berry, Bob Dylan. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, that list is long, man. Louis
Mm-hmm.
Jordan was doing like a jump blues, kind of a jump blues, jazz, rhythm and blues style. You know, he came from Chick Webb's band. He was the lead singer, him and Ella Fitzgerald in Chick Webb's band. And Chick Webb fired Louis Jordan. Louis Jordan went off and started his own band. Louis Jordan and his Timpani Five. And
Mm-hmm.
he was rocking. He was the hottest thing in the 40s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the early 40s and mid 40s. Louis Jordan was like no other. And he was a brilliant sax player. And he could write music, he could perform music, and he made you laugh. A lot of people like that style. That, you know, like Caledonia, his songs had a sense of humor. There's a lot of Joe Tex. You can see where Joe Tex might have been listening to Louis Jordan also, because, you know, I'll take you anywhere, skinny leg. I ain't gonna bump no more with no big fat woman. You see that in Joe Tex's music. And he said, okay, well, he probably, when he was little, he's probably, I'm sure, listening to Louis Jordan. And
Yeah, I
then, you
wanted.
know,
Mhm.
yeah. So I just connect the dots, man. You
So I
know,
wanted to watch some for a second or two about Louis Jordan,
okay,
about a song. Okay, let me play this for us. This about a minute or so. Let me
okay,
know what you think.
okay.
Beans and cornbread, beans and cornbread, beans and cornbread. Beans and cornbread had a fight. Beans knocked cornbread out of sight. Cornbread said, now that's all right. Meet me on the corner tomorrow night. I'll be ready. I'll be ready 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 tomorrow night. Beans told cornbread, if you ain't straight, you better wake up, I'll gas you gate. Been in this pot since 2:30, swelling and puffing and almost due. I'll be ready.
So that I just wanted to play the clip of that. It's like he was this extraordinary, ahead of his time.
Yeah, you know, I consider him one of the prototypes for hip hop. That particular song, Spike Lee used that in the movie Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
That song was used in the movie Malcolm X, or Spike Lee joint back in the 1992 when Denzel played Malcolm. Yeah, I mean, he was just ahead of his time, and like you see, influenced a lot of people. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's also one of the pioneers of hip hop. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. He has a song called "You Gotta Have the Beat."
Mm-hmm.
Early 40s, you know. I mean, it's amazing. The man is amazing. And he
Hmm.
tells you what you gotta be. That song is the prototype for what I would call hip hop today.
Hmm.
I mean, bar none. You know, I think he's one of the, if you want to go by just legendary foundation,
Hmm.
he was laying foundation for what would become hip hop later down. He's one of the precursors to hip hop.
Hmm.
And he was just brilliant, man. You know,
Hmm.
great band leader,
Hmm.
songwriter, singer, musician. He was all that.
Hmm.
You know, a James Brown and Prince of sorts for his time.
Okay. Could you
Yeah.
talk about jazz and its influence and some of its historical part of jazz?
Jazz is one of the first popular forms of music. You know, a lot of people like to say jazz starts in New Orleans. The first jazz musician, according to Wynton Marsalis and some other jazz icons, they say that Buddy Bolden is the father of jazz. I tend to disagree with that. I
Hmm.
like Buddy Bolden. He was a brilliant trumpet player. They made a movie about him and all that good stuff. And I take nothing from him. But when I think of jazz, the first jazz musician to me would have to be Scott Joplin. I mean, I feel that jazz, in my opinion, came out of ragtime. You know, the stride piano style playing is rooted, connected to ragtime. And jazz essentially was one of the first popular forms of music where black people were influencing white people. It was just blown away, you know, because jazz was real big. There was a movie called Swing Kids where they show how jazz music was influencing the white kids in Germany, you know, before Hitler just came into power. And when he was out, you know, he banded and outlawed jazz music in Germany. He didn't want people listening to that music because that was, you know, synonymous with Negroes, with blacks. So he banned a lot of people from listening to it. And jazz, you know, again, man, it's powerhouse. I mean, Billie Holiday, Fats Waller, Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. I mean, it's so many. Charlie Christian, one of the greatest jazz musicians ever. He died when he was 25. He played with Benny Goodman's band. He was one of, to me, the essential reason why Benny Goodman's band was so good, because Charlie Christian was a guitar player. Nobody had ever played guitar like that before. He died of tuberculosis when he was 25 years old. He didn't live that long, but he was brilliant. And you can hear his style in Wes Montgomery and other people. Just phenomenal. There's so many. Jazz is, you know, was had a sexual connotation to it from the word, and you know, again, it just anything that's against society is going to be rebellious. And normally in forms of music, it's going to be black. So jazz, man, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington wrote over 2,000 songs. You know, it's just, you know, jazz is an essential music, man. It's also classical music. Jazz is classical music. Just like people talk about Chopin and Bach and, you know, and Stravinsky and Tchaikovsky. Okay, and Haydn. Well, okay. I feel the same way about Thelonious Monk and, you know, John Coltrane and, you know, Dizzy Gillespie and these Oscar Peterson. You know, same kind of vibe, man.
So
You
let me
know.
ask, so let me ask you this. We're trying to interrupt you. So you talked about Scott Joplin
Yes, sir.
and ragtime. I want to play something from Scott Joplin. I want to get your thoughts,
Yeah,
and can you talk about that for me?
no problem.
That was called an easy winner for the personnel who are out there listening. So, what's your thoughts on that?
You know, it's vintage Scott Joplin, man. You know, just what can you say? I mean, he's brilliant, man. Just how he arranged that. and he would write his own songs. He would sell them for little or nothing. But I mean, this guy did so much great music, man. I mean, that's a brilliant cut. I like one of my favorites. The Entertainer's a cool song, but I like Maple Leaf Rag. That's probably one of my favorites by him.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love Maple Leaf Rag, man. But again, Scott Joplin, in a league of his own at the time. Cause when I first heard the ragtime stuff, it kind of sounded like it could be like related to the minstrel show in a way. But then as I look deeper, I see the richness and the true essence of it. I say, no, this is really good. And then I noticed a lot of predominantly European orchestras would be playing a lot of his music. So it was held up high. His music, his appreciation and love for Scott Joplin's music has remained among us. It's just how it hadn't stayed among our people. We tend not to hold on to our icons. We tend to just what's new. You got people calling, and I'm not saying Tupac is not a genius in his own right, but I don't put people like Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls in the same league with people like Jimi Hendrix, Miles Davis, Scott Joplin, John Coltrane, Duke Ellington. That's a genius on a whole different level. So I mean, because some people they have very limited musical knowledge, and they've only been exposed to stuff like that, and they'll call it genius. That might be good, but that, brother, when you don't hear what I've heard, and you own some of the music your own, that's not genius. Genius is what you just played.
Now let me ask you. You brought up Duke Ellington.
Yes, sir. Love him. And also, I want to add that Scott Joplin was from Texas, just so people know that. He was really from Texarkana. And he moved to Missouri. Some people believe that Joplin, Missouri was named after him. I don't know. But that's what I've heard.
That's a good point. Let me play a little bit for Duke Ellington and get your thoughts on it, Professor.
Okay.
So what's your thought on that?
Take the A Train. I love that song. That was really composed more with the late, great Billy Strayhorn. That was his right-hand man that he pulled in. Billy Strayhorn really composed that. But, and Duke contributed to it. But that's really more of a Billy Strayhorn composition. I think it came out in 1939. That's one of the greatest songs in jazz history, man. I mean, what can you say? I mean, Duke Ellington and his orchestra, I mean, they dress sharp and they play sharp. Bar none. That's just a phenomenal song, man. And it's been used in movies, commercials, everything you can think of. And, it's just a classic. Take the A Train. I know that song. They also have a vocal version of it, but which came later. But that's a brilliant song, man.
All right.
Yeah, and Billy Strayhorn, I don't know what inspired him to write that, but Duke was telling him to, we need to come up with something like this or that, And Billy Strayhorn, he composed it, again, and he gave it to Duke, and the rest is history. And it's brilliant number.
And let me throw one other jazz type of group out there and get your thoughts on this, because I'm just using these things for people listening for fair uses doctrine.
Okay. That's the
Oh,
great Count Basie, isn't it? Isn't that Count
yes,
Basie?
yes, sir, Professor. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, from good old Red Bank, New Jersey. I know Count Basie. Yeah, I love Count Basie. Brilliant band leader and composer, man. 6 o'clock jump, 3 o'clock jump, all those kind of songs. He was phenomenal, man. Another great one, a Cotton Club King, you know,
Hmm.
just brilliant, man.
What
Rest in peace, Count. He died of cancer, but he was a another great, brilliant artist, man.
what
Mm.
do you think, in your professional opinion? Because when I look at things like that, and I see basically 99.99%, the other 100% all black playing live instruments.
Oh, you mean the orchestras and bands? Oh
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Comparable to the now.
Different time, brother. First of all, with all honesty, I would say that the fact that we don't. I mean, technology has made it where you don't have to probably have as many people in your band. Also, just the love and the talent of the musicianship back then, because back then you people were more into mastering instruments. I mean, just that whole thing has changed. Now, there are still white groups that get together and play like that, and play those black artists' music. Like you just hear Count Basie, you get a white orchestra or white jazz ensemble, they get together and they'll play that like a tribute to Count Basie or Duke Ellington, because I've seen it in the 2000s. So uh, I don't even know if we have the manpower as a people to actually produce those kind of groups no more, man. And then they took instruments out of the school in the primary grades. I think now in middle school and high school is when you start getting exposed to instruments more now. I mean, as opposed to elementary school. Elementary schools had always been around when you were in the first grade and even kinder sometimes. Back in the days, in the 70s and 80s and on back 60s, people would learn how to play instruments as a little child. So you don't even have that anymore.
Well, it
But
seems
that's a brilliant, just that whole. So I mean, the level of talent is it's gonna drop off. It ain't gonna be like it's not gonna be like it was then, because people are not doing what they did then. And people, how many households have Count Basie music in it today?
mm,
And if we did look at that, how many of those households would actually be black? If we be honest, how many black households gonna have some Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Miles Davis music? Let's be honest. I'm more likely to find that in a white or Asian household than I am in a black household.
well, then it's kind of hard to
I'm just
complain.
being honest.
I'm sorry, what, Professor, repeat that.
I'm just being honest. I'm more likely to find that kind of music in a white or Asian household than I am, you know, I just, it's just a fact.
I mean, when I look at that, I see magnificence. I see great African American Native Black achievements, creativity. That's
I
what I
see that
see.
too. I see it too.
And it seems to be that my personal opinion, I may be totally wrong, and that's fine. But my personal opinion, if I was able to wave my magical hand, if there was opportunity for more African and Native Blacks to be able to learn live instruments, I think that is so important on that.
Well, I agree, man, but it costs money. It costs money to play instruments. And again, you look at the urban plight. Uh, if a lot of people aren't, if a lot of people, if you're not growing up in households where the people are enriched with culture, then that might be the farthest thing from their mind.
Okay.
If I gotta pay these lights and we gotta get these bills paid and we barely got food, then playing an instrument might not be in the near future.
Well, maybe that's on purpose because to me there has to be some type. Well, there should be. I put like that some type of opportunity for these various types of well-to-do African American Native Black personnel that's rich or middle class to be able to call these schools or make some kind of way of for the ones who are able to, or the schools or the kids
Mm,
to at least offer it.
Well, again, I gotta look at people for what they are. I mean, if I'm black and I live in Frisco, or I live in Allen and I live in Plano, a lot of times there are gonna be avenues for me and my children to get exposure to that if we choose. Now, when you start looking in the city, if be it Chicago or any other inner city, unless some just really nice black person comes back and works at a school or just wants to do something for those environments, or Dallas Old Cliff or something, then it just ain't gonna happen. I mean, that's idealistic and realistic, but I have to keep it honest. I
Hmm.
mean, if I'm black and I live out in a fluent environment, then my children are more likely to be exposed to that than say somebody that doesn't or does not live in that environment.
Okay.
And I don't know how much of me calling in is going to do since my children don't go to school in that district. Or and then I don't know if your parents are listening to stuff like the Amigos and
Hmm.
the Three Amigos and Nicki Minaj and that kind of music. I don't know if they would even have interest in anything as enriching as uh, Count Basie or Duke Ellington. So it gets down to stuff like culture, exposure, class, education. All that comes into play about music as well.
Well, that's
So,
a long way to go. So,
um,
would you get into
mm,
some historicalness of blues?
blues.
Yes, sir.
Shit. Okay, what about the blues?
Just some of the history of blues, and it's.
The thrill is gone.
Hmm.
Uh, what can I say? Blues is it's the voice of black people struggle in this country. And then right after Negro spirituals, blues gives us every form of music that we have now. Jazz comes from blues. Rhythm and blues obviously comes from blues. Everything, rock and roll, blues, the bass, the basic, the mother and father of all that music is blues. So
Hmm.
blues, I mean, ain't no other way to say it. Blues is essential, man. I mean, without the blues, we lose.
Interesting. I was reading something here where it talks about the best-selling solo artist overall,
Okay,
Elvis Presley.
okay, and I understand that.
Hmm.
I understand why he had.
Hmm.
Well, Michael Jackson actually broke his record, so
Hmm.
that's incorrect, or that might be from another year.
This was just not too long ago. I checked this out. Now, unless something's changed, say Elvis Presley is the best-selling solo artist with 1 billion sales worldwide.
I think Michael. I'm almost sure.
Yeah, hello. Oh, hello. Well, we probably had a little bit of slight technical situations until we hear back from Professor Armstrong. But I will tell you that black music is so essential to do this. Okay, but let's get back to Professor Armstrong on that. Okay,
Yeah, can you
you
hear
back,
me?
Professor?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm here. I had a little. I don't know what happened,
Not a
but no,
problem.
you say Michael. If Elvis Presley is, and I question that. If Michael Jackson, if Elvis Presley is, I would believe that there are some playing around with numbers going on. And see, I don't trust the people that put that stuff out a lot of times because there might be an agenda behind that to keep. You mean tell me there's more people buying Elvis Presley music than there are Michael Jackson? I find that hard to believe,
Uh,
bro.
I'm
My,
looking at Yeah, I'm looking at the who. Yeah, so I'm looking at the same thing here. The same
I don't know about it. Now it might be true, but I'm just saying. So a white man playing black music is so the most.
What's it? Yeah, well, but see, there's
Okay.
kind of a fishy thing going on because it says Elvis Presley, and then I see something that says who was the best-selling solo artist 2020, and then it has a pop group part of it. So, however, whatever on
I
that.
think they might have something to do with who's controlling the narrative on the numbers because if
Oh,
white
okay.
people, if someone white with all due respect, based on the white supremacy and racism in the system, if someone white, they've always manipulated numbers and played tricks with numbers and did stuff to make them appear to be the first and everything. That's part of white supremacist belief, that they come out first and foremost ahead. So, I mean, it's kind of like, it's almost like if I use Simone Biles. Simone Biles, the great gymnast. I mean, Nadia Comaneci and Mary Lou Retton can't do what she's done. But who's to say years from now, somebody might say, well, she's second. But the greatest of all time is Mary Lou Retton and Nadia Comaneci. People do that, man. But there's always a supremacist agenda. Now, I'm not saying that Elvis Presley. I just like to know who's buying his records.
Well, let me throw this out.
I know for a fact his music don't sell like Michael Jackson's does.
Well, let me throw this out. You made an interesting point. This is Guinness World Records.
Okay.
Website. Elvis Presley, which we just talked about, with the best-selling solo artist, with one billion sales worldwide, 129.5 million in the U.S. But not even just that. But let me just read you some stuff. It said somebody said that makes sense. Greatest entertainer of all time by far. But then, listen, I'm just reading on this. On that, sometimes the best way of things are just kind of going with the flow of the things with context. Elvis was the originator. Michael was his imitator. And again, brother, we just going with the flow of this a little bit.
I just said that it has a lot to do with white supremacy, man, and white race and racism. I mean, obviously, if the person, let's just take what you just said, whatever white person said that Elvis was the originator and Michael was his imitator. Well, who was Elvis imitating? So if Elvis was imitating black folks, so if Michael took anything from Elvis, he was imitating his own kind. Because without Elvis, without black people, you don't have no Elvis Presley. If Elvis Presley had just been your average white boy and wasn't saying black music and wasn't trying to dance like black people and wasn't trying to sound like black people, he wouldn't have sold all of that. But like Sam Phillips told him and Colonel Parker, and they told him, Sam Phillips said, man, if I can find a white man with the Negro sound and the Negro feel, I'll make millions of dollars. And here comes Elvis. So they did. And that's a fact. So when a white person makes that kind of statement, they obviously don't know the history, they don't know music, and they also racist. Because that's a racist statement.
Right. Well,
Elvis, how you gonna be the king if all he did was copy the people that created it? That destroys that myth right there.
That requires research and logical sense. But I want to play this. Kind of goes back where we said from the great Rosetta Thorpe, the sister.
Okay.
Up above my head, I hear music in the air. Up above my head, I hear music in the air. Up above my head, I hear music in the air. Oh yes, I really do believe there's a heaven somewhere. All in my room, music everywhere. All in my room, there is music everywhere. All in my room, music everywhere. Well, I really do believe there is a heaven somewhere.
What's your thought, Professor?
One of the queens of the godmother of the foundation of rock and roll. Brilliant, man. She's in a league of her own, from Arkansas. I want to say Plump, Arkansas is what it is. Plump, Arkansas. She revolutionized gospel music. She did a little blues, but she is one of the greatest just single talents, period. Elvis Presley is not even more original than her. And she comes, she's playing that gospel, but that guitar was up front, even Chuck Berry and, other groups like the Who, other, Pete Town, people were taking her riffs. A lot of the British and British rock bands were taking riffs from her. she's foundational in terms of rock and in aspects of blues as well. She's phenomenal.
And I came across another elder, actually, this brilliant an elder. But I want to play something on that right for a second here.
Okay.
I'm going to also play Sweet Vine Vine cotton picking style. That's with 2 fingers.
So the great Elizabeth Cotton.
Yeah, I've seen her. I don't know a whole lot about her. I know she was kind of blues.
Hmm.
I don't know much about Miss Cotton, but I just know she had that style that she was cotton picking style, whatever she was cotton. Uh, you know, she was decent. That's more like folk blues, what she
Hmm.
was just doing. Yeah, she's good, but that's
But
more like a folk blues style.
okay, well, definitely, I
Yeah.
want to get your thoughts on this great African American Native Black woman.
Get my thoughts on who?
Did you ever sit thinking with 1,000 things on your mind? Did you ever sit thinking with 1,000 things on your mind?
The great Bessie Smith.
Oh man, yes. The
Which
great Bessie Smith. I mean, she was the protege for Ma Rainey, and Monique did a movie about Bessie Smith where Queen Latifah played Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith was like the tops at her time, man. She was selling more blues records than everybody. A lot of her songs, that real raw blues, where she kind of, what the black experience is in her music, man. What she was going through with men, how she was, the alcohol, getting drunk. I mean, she was quite a woman. She stood up to the Ku Klux Klan actually, with a shotgun, ready to get down. Told them they were gonna do what they planned to do at her show.
mhm.
Yes, she was a feisty woman. She didn't take no job, man.
It's a different time, and it's like it's dwindling. But one other quick one relating to the blues from this great blues maestro that is sorely that type of music is sorely missed.
Bobby Sock, baby, I've got to let you go.
Great T-Bone Walker.
Yeah, he's originally from Linden, Texas, but he spent a lot of his time where he honed his skills
Where is that?
right here in Oak Cliff, Texas,
Mm.
Dallas. He lived over there in the 10th historical district, the 10th Street historical district.
Now, for the people who don't know anything about that, what is the 10th Street Historical District in
The
Dallas?
10th Street historical district is a historically black area in Oak Cliff, Dallas, where a lot of black businesses thrived and black artists lived and black engineers and architects and black beauty salons, all of that. It was a thriving black community, man. A lot of people that played down in Deep Ellum, which Deep Ellum was also a blues community in Dallas. Now it's white. It went from black to white. It's white people kind of revitalized it, but it was a historical black blues district area where black people used to go and play music and party and have a good time, and it was pretty safe from what I know about it. But T-Bone, you know, he was the man. He influenced Jimi Hendrix, Chuck Berry. Anybody that's in early rock and roll is taking some T-Bone Walker, man. Eric Clapton, T-Bone. T-Bone is everywhere, man. I mean, and also the great white blues man, Stevie Ray Vaughan. A lot of his style, you getting B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, and of course T-Bone Walker. You know, from when you listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was a pretty honest white guy from Oak Cliff, went to Kimball High School, but he just tells the truth. You know, like that whole thing about Elvis. I wish people go look up what Charlie Watts had for the Rolling Stones, the Beatles drummer, what he had to say about Elvis Presley. That kind of ran me. And what Bobby Womack said about him and what Ray Charles said about him. I mean, that's almost an insult. But T-Bone, man, Aaron T-Bone Walker, man, he's awesome, man. You know, yeah, he lived in, you know, he's from Linden, Texas, but, you know, he lived in Dallas, and he, of course, he died. He had moved to California. He's one of my favorite, you know, blues, electric blues artists, you know, Texas blues, jump blues. He playing it all, man. I mean, he's just a bad dude, composer, wrote a lot of his own stuff. He was just amazing, man. He that like playing the guitar behind the back and behind your head and with your teeth. A lot of that Jimi Hendrix took from T-Bone Walker. T-Bone was doing all that, like a circus tricks. With the, you know, he's a bad dude, man.
Okay.
You know, you read some things now, and I don't know why people do this. They'll throw in that he had Cherokee blood. It's like they'll throw in that Jimi Hendrix had Cherokee blood. Okay, that's irrelevant. He was black. I mean, I don't know why. It's kind of like saying, oh, I don't know if people are trying to be politically correct when they say that. You're either white or non-white. Okay, and if you had black blood, like we had that, the one drop blood here, you're black. And those people, like, you know, Hendrix, T-Bone Walker, they knew they were black. They identified with black people. He was not playing music on the reservation. He was playing music in black juke joints and stuff.
Whoa, wait, I'm sorry. Repeat that again.
I mean, there's this thing now where people try to come out and say, well, it's black, it'll be African American. I've noticed this. And then they come out and say, oh, he had Cherokee, like Jimmy, he had Indian, T-Bone, all had Indian, Bessie Smith had Indian. I mean, Betsy Coleman had Indian, the great aviation pilot. Man, these people were black. And I'm saying that these people were hanging out with black people. They lived in black environment. They were raised around black people. They went to school with black people, and they lived as black people. So that's really irrelevant. I don't know why people do that. You're either white or non-white. And if you had one drop of black blood, you were black. So I don't know if this is a new thing to try to trickle down or split up black people. I'll say I'm not really getting black people more confused. A trick probably of some kind, but the man was black. Again, he lived in the 10th Street Historical District. Was not a reservation. It was a black community. So, you know, I just had to say that.
That's a good point.
You know, and he was also even known as, you know, Oak Cliff T-Bone by some. You know, Trinity River Blues. He had a song called the Trinity River Blues, man.
That's wonderful.
Which is in Oak Cliff, runs through Oak Cliff. So I mean, I just look at I tell people, you're gonna talk about, you know what you're talking about. And I ain't no Google dude. This is all out my head. So, you know, I'm just saying, if you're gonna make these kind of statements, you know what you're talking about. T-Bone was amazing. Again, he was the forerunner for the electric guitar, man. One of the greatest ever. Bad dude.
And I think that's one of the many big problems, or some major problems, not knowing research and not knowing reading enough to know how great the achievements of African ancestry, Native Black, especially in Black music as well. So what about one of our other topics in country? Okay,
when you say country in terms of Black music, a lot of people think of, if I say country music, they probably think of Charley Pride. I think of people before Charley Pride. I think of people like the great DeFord Bailey, the Grand Ole Opry, who made that, playing the harmonica, made it sound like a train. I mean, DeFord Bailey's Essential is one of the keys of country music. Then you got, Arnold Snell. Arnold Snell was the black violinist and fiddle player that the white people would be fighting over to get him to play at their jigs. and it's believed that he was poisoned by some other white people to keep the other white people from having to play at their gig they was having. They were, 'cause they followed this black guy, Arnold Schultz. That's his name. Bad dude, man. And then it's it's interesting, man, because the foundation, Rufus T. Tot, who Hank Williams, he influenced Hank Williams. A lot of that is Rufus T. Tot, who lived on a plantation in Lyles, Alabama, who pretty much Hank Williams learned from. His whole style, a lot of it came from T. Tot, and Hank Williams acknowledges that. Now, I don't know if the movie made about Hank Williams, I don't know if they showed that in the movie, with all honesty, but depending on who did the movie, it might have got left out anyway, because they tend to do that. If it is a great white artist that just imitating black people, got his whole style from black people, but you won't see the black person in the movie. It's like when they made the movie about Queen, Freddie Mercury and Queen. Well, Freddie Mercury, a lot of his record was trying to sound like Aretha Franklin. He was Queen, there was a lot of Aretha Franklin or John Deacon, who was the bass player. When they did Another One Bites the Dust, well, that's Nile Rodgers and Chic. Doom, 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 doom. I mean, and John Deacon tells you that, but that's not going to be in, mainstream. It's not going to be mainstream notification, of course.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think about the Ken Burns documentary on country?
Ken Burns shows you the essential ingredients of country music. When he did the country music documentary, he was very honest and forthcoming. He showed you how he originally started with black people. I mean, he's very honest.
Mm-hmm.
He showed you all the white people doing country, but even a lot of white people that he showed in the documentary acknowledged the black roots of country. So I thought that was very important.
Now, you said DeFord Bailey. I want to play just a few seconds of the great DeFord Bailey. I'll let you get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
I'm playing John Henry.
What's your thoughts, Professor?
That's him, man. That great harmonica mouth horn player. Some people call what he was playing a form of black hillbilly music. Before, because when he was really young, when he played with his dad and them, they were playing their own style of country. I mean, he's just rooted in the country, man. I mean, this guy DeFord was the first black person to play at the Grand Ole Opry too. And he was born in like 1899 and he died like in the 80s, man. He was about 82 when he died. And he was from Nashville, Tennessee. Well, I think, he was from Tennessee. I'm not sure if he was from Nashville, but he spent a lot of time in Nashville. He could play banjo, he played guitar. He was just a talented dude. And he was, again, the first black voice at the Grand Ole Opry. A lot of white people assumed he was white because he was over the air and you couldn't see him. And he do that, and he do that harmonica playing. They found out, he's a black guy. So, I mean, just amazing, man. His career spanned a long time. I mean, the guy was just phenomenal, man.
Well, it's interesting when you say that because I have your book right in front of me.
Uh-huh.
And we talk about black hillbilly music, or DeFord Bailey. It talks about how this style of music, which DeFord later called black hillbilly music, started to fade in the 1920s when the record companies came south to record traditional music. For marketing purposes, the record companies segregated music into white and black series. They believe white people would buy only country music performed by white musicians and that black people would buy only blues and gospel music performed by black musicians.
Well, we know that's not true, though. Usually that's what they believe. Notice again, who's controlling the narrative? Who has the power to define? So again, you get white supremacists is really big at that time. Racism extreme. Because a lot of black music, the blues and rock and roll when black people were doing it was called race music. Race music, can you imagine that? until the white guy, the white Jewish guy, said, "No, that sounds racist, man." The guy with Atlantic Records, I'm trying to think of his name. He came and said, "No, it's rhythm and blues. It's blues with heavy rhythm, so that's rhythm and blues."
Mm-hmm.
But they were calling our music race music, man. Well, that means that we're race music, but Elvis Presley not race music. But Elvis Presley is copying off the blacks. But that's not. But that's not race music. Would he do it?
It's interesting when you say that because also in the same
Yeah,
session.
Wexler. Jerry Wexler coined that term, rhythm and blues. Jerry, that's his name, Jerry Wexler. Jerry Wexler from Atlantic. And I appreciate him doing that. Because he was just, we found it sickening that, you're calling black people race music. What are they racing against? What race are they in? Who the hell, what? Race? So there's so much racism, man, that was, that was in this thing, man.
Well, okay. Besides, because R&B, we need to talk about that, but I'm glad you brought that up. So let me throw this out before I wanted to ask one last thing on the country genre part. Could you talk about dance? Could you talk about could you talk about dance, disco type music and that influence?
Disco, yeah, some people believe that the word disco evolved in France originally, but the music disco itself blew up in America. Disco scene was real big in the 70s, man, throughout the 70s. And the best disco singers and disco bands were black, period. Don't get me wrong, you had Leo Sayer, you had Alicia Bridges, we had white artists that did disco music, the Bee Gees, but what were they all influenced by? What were they all doing? Black music. And by far the greatest my favorite disco group was Chic, were featuring Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, because when you look at music in its totality, I think they're essential. They're right up there in terms of producers and writing. They're in a league of their own almost. I mean, people talk about Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam. People talk about LA and Babyface. Well, I think Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards' resume is a little longer. When you look at all the people that were using Nile Rodgers or Bernard Edwards, or the both of them. I mean, we're talking about Madonna, David Bowie. You're talking about Sister Sledge. You're talking about NXS. Man, I can go down the list, man. The Draft Punk. I mean, what can you say? I mean, the influence they had on groups like Queen. I mean, these guys, Power Station. I mean, these guys are just all over the board, man. So, disco again, and also you had people like I know this is people consider June also Pride Month. There were black music artists who were gay, who also were very important in the disco scene. Fine example would be, I would say, Sylvester. Sylvester, man, when I was in the 7th, 8th grade, Come On and Dance, the disco heat, and he also is responsible for the 2 Tons of Fun. Marsha Wash and other sister that came out of the 2 Tons of Fun. Sylvester was by far one of the enigmatic and faces of disco during the latter part of it. And the fact that how bold he was for that LGBT movement, just for him to not compromise who he was and just come straight forward and be who he was and who he wanted to be. None of us really cared because his music was good. It didn't matter. Same thing with the Village People. It didn't matter. We liked the music. We might have had our thoughts about, how they looked, but we love their music. So again, it's been, you get the same thing with David Bowie. So again, man, hey, disco was a crazy fad, and all of a sudden Disco Sucks came out to
Can you hear me?
eliminate disco. They didn't want to play in the stadiums. It was mainly white, heavy metal type white folks that was pushing that.
Okay,
disco sucks. I remember that at my high school, disco sucks.
Okay, what happened? I'm sorry, Professor. Now, it broke up a little bit. You were saying something happened?
Yeah, a lot of people got into this disco sucks movement where people started hating disco, started turning their backs. Some radio stations started playing. They were pushing like oh, it's destroying rock and roll or something, and it was mainly a white male anger movement that started pushing disco out the way.
Hmm.
And so a lot of more or less black people, it didn't matter with black people because we were already playing our styles of music. So a lot of people playing stuff like funk, a lot of people playing stuff like rhythm and blues and soul, because right when disco was ending, funk just blew up. Funk, and then later on hip hop. But funk and soul was just always there. And then when you had disco, you see a lot of people playing funk and soul, which was still major forms of popular black music. And every now and then you have a soul artist or rhythm and blues artist that would do disco. You know, Casey and the Sunshine Band, white dude from Florida, he had some of the best disco music, but it was black music that you wanted to hear. So, and he had a black band basically. So
Could you
again,
could you talk about some of the personnel from different countries and their influence upon the music by
you
blacks?
mean how black music influenced other people in
Various
other
person.
countries?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, I mean, where do you go? I mean, we could start with England. It's all we already talked about the Beatles and the Stones, Elton John, Amy Winehouse. I mean, that's how black music sound when it gets to England. If you want to listen to a group like Kano, I'm ready. It's how black music sound when it gets to Italy. Back it up when it gets to Italy again, and then to Germany, you get the Poets of Rhythm. Or when it gets to Japan, you get Hiroshima or Hiroshima, who took their own traditional Japanese style and blended it with black jazz, or blended it with the black jazz coming out of America, or with soul coming out of America. Same thing with Yellow Magic Orchestra. Same thing when you get to Australia with Jamiroquai, acid jazz and funk. Wai from Australia, combining a lot of, more like funk and more like soul. And you get songs like Stimulation and Sugar Free. So I mean, this was a continual practice, and it always has been. Remember, I said earlier, black music, the only music that travels from country to country and from continent to continent. So, if I wanted to say black music, even in Latin America, if I talk about salsa and merengue, I'm still talking about black music. Why? Because Celia Cruz is black. Why? Because Benny Moré is black. Why? Because Arsenio Rodriguez is black. They're all Afro-Cuban. Okay, their influence went to Africa. You hear right now, even to this day in Senegal and some places, they have salsa groups. Why? Because salsa is Afro-Latin music. It comes from the Africans. That's what they brought to Latin America. Either in Puerto Rico, you have bomba, planta. Those are African indigenous music that came to Puerto Rico. I mean, so again, you're talking black music in Americas. In Brazil, you got samba. Again, black music. So I just in those few minutes just went around the world.
Appreciate
So
that.
and you also, in so when I say black music, I'm not just talking about music in America. I'm talking about the influence of African people's music coming out of the Americas, going all around the world. You listen to the Police. Don't stand so close to me. You listen to Sting and the Police. You hear reggae all over it. That's what drew me to the Police back in the 80s. I'm listening to Walking on the Moon. I'm hearing reggae. So, I mean, we just black music all over the place, man. So, again, I understand why Jimmy Carter came up with Black Music Month, because it's infectious and nothing outdoes it. It's all over the place.
Now it's interesting you brought that up about Jimmy Carter on that and that time frame, which kind of leads me into one of our last categories we want to talk about, since this is obviously one of the top worldwide genres in general. It's hip hop.
Yay, hip hop.
Yes, sir. So can you just talk about hip hop, some of the origins, and just talk about some of the origins and other things
Well,
like to talk about hip
if you ask Questlove, he'll probably give you a different analogy than me. But they'll say Cool Men Hurt, and a lot of those guys that were dubbing and stuff that were Jamaican descent that were in New York. I mean, yeah, but I'm talking about from my perspective, what was popular hip hop to me, what introduced me to hip hop, was like everybody else. It was Sugar Hill Gang, 1979, Rapper's Delight. Prior to that, I mean, if we're going to talk about what is hip hop, but even before Sugar Hill Gang, a little bit before that, King Tim the Third by the Fatback Band. I think that was the first, which featured Tim Washington rapping. I think that was the first time I heard hip hop that will become hip hop in terms of how we hear it today. It was phenomenal. When Fatback Band was a funk and R&B group from New York, who everybody like looking for that good stuff, tighten up on that backstroke. So they were always doing funk like R&B records. But when they came with King Tim III, we didn't know what that was. This guy was just rapping, putting together words. I am the voice of King Tim III. And then shortly after that, we heard Sugar Hill Gang, which was more popular. I said a hip hop. Once again, who you find when you listen to Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. Who you found in the backdrop? Chic. Bernard Edwards and Al Rogers. Doom, 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 doom. Good Times from Chic. And so they just rapped over it, and that was the cause of it. That was I started this extraordinary musical genre. And so then you come on down, just when you get you start getting Run DMC, you get before them though, you get Spoonie G and the Sequence and Grandmaster Flash. All of that. Sugar Hill was the first popular label. Sugar Hill Records, which Sylvia Robinson and Joey Robinson were responsible for. Sylvia had also sung rock and roll with this group called Mickey and Sylvia. It was a duo, her and this guy. Love is Strange was a big hit they had in the 50s. Another song she was responsible for in the 70s was called Pillow Talk. She's the godmother of hip hop. Hey, baby, let me stay. Sylvia. I mean, and then, she was just a phenomenal producer and executive producer. And thank God for Sugar Hill Records, because all those guys were starting off on her label. And then you get Kumo Divas with the Treacherous Three, and I mean, wow, you had so many people. And then you had actually British white artists that got in on that market, because a lot of people don't know, but Wham, which featured George Michael, they did hip hop. They did hip hop in their early music. So did the Clash. Was the first white group, British or otherwise, American or otherwise, but they were British, to do a hip hop record. They did the Magnificent Seven, which predated Blondie's record, which was Rapture, which is the punk rock band featuring Deborah Harry called Rapture. What the Clash did theirs before her. Hers was the first one here done by white people in the United States. But if we're going to talk about the first rap done by a white person, was actually the Clash, Magnificent Seven. I got that album. It's on the Standinista album. Good album. And you got Malcolm McLaren, but then I take it back. So black people, we main thruster, but again, everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Malcolm McLaren, one of the pioneers of hip hop. And then, again, LL Cool J, the regulars that we already know about. And you got conscious, so hip hop breaks into different genres of hip hop. You got conscious hip hop. You got, the street level hip hop. You got the shock hip hop that NWA brought to the format. The inner city violent hip hop. I mean, you got different styles of hip hop. You got Urban Dance Squad, which is more of a rock, new wave kind of hip hop. So we had a little bit of everything, man. And then you have females in hip hop, because the loudest voice being MC Lyte and Queen Latifah at the time. Sister Souljah made noise later on. But, that's my spin on hip hop. Hip hop has since then has fell off, in my opinion.
Well, I want to hear your opinion about that. I want to show something for a couple of generations ago. Kind of want to get your thought on this. What kind of sounds like a pre-hip hop a little bit, but may not be. But I want to get your thoughts on that for a second. We'll listen to a few minutes of this particular group.
Well, it's over and over. Oh, no, oh, no, I got to ride on the women's side, but it's a oh, no, oh, no, I got to ride on the women's side. Brother Noah, my God's talking, ride on the women's side. Said he would ride on the wind and tide. Hey, children, stop, steal, and listen.
listen to me. God walked down to the brandy sea. He declared that he must send a man, and then he decided to destroy the land. He spoke to Noah. Noah stopped. He said, Noah, I want you to build me an ark. I want you to build it 3 cubits long. I want you to build it big and strong. I want it 50 high and 50 wide, so it will stand the wind and tide. It's oh Noah, oh Noah, oh Noah. I got to go to ride on the wind and tide, but it's a oh.
All right, now, Professor, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I've seen those guys. That's a gospel. It was just like a ramming gospel to me.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I don't call it, the reason I lean more toward You Gotta Have a Beat by the great Louis Jordan is more hip hop, because it's rhythm and blues. That was just like gospel ramming. I mean, I wouldn't, because hip hop was not a gospel genre.
Mm-hmm.
So sticking to the format of what hip hop is, You Gotta Have a Beat, which is also older than that song. Louis Jordan's song came out before that. That style, though, I guess some people might say that the way that they're ramming the words together, some people might say, okay, that can be seen as an ancestor of hip hop to some degree. Yeah, more, I guess we could attribute it to gospel hip hop, maybe, which comes later. You know, like Lecrae, right? Those are probably the ancestors of hip hop, more like Lecrae style or something like that. But you know, I've heard that before and I've seen that, and I thought it was interesting. I like how they ram the words together. But I still have to go with You Gotta Have a Beat by Louis Jordan as being the most profound ancestor of hip hop in terms of early genres, or early music, or early forms.
Because that group's name was, I can never pronounce it a lot of times, the Jubilaires.
Jubilaires?
Yes, sir.
The Jubilaires?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So,
I mean, they were known in gospel. They kind of did that 4-part harmony thing like the Ink Spots.
mm-hmm.
Also like the Five Blind Boys would do, the Pilgrim Travelers and all of the Dixie Hummingbirds, that whole style of, 4 and 5-part harmony singing, like would go on later to be popularized to doo-wop music, and then later on through Temptations, and later on through New Edition. It's they run in that tradition to me, more or less.
Okay, I want to play something else too. I want to get your thoughts about this, because you were about to talk about the kind of changes in hip hop a little bit on some things. But let me just throw something out. Let me show you something on this.
Def Jam. Here it is. Okay. Cut it.
Hey, I'm Dina. Look at my feet. My feet are straight ahead. You don't want to do that. You want to turn your feet out. I'm going to do this backwards. And that's what makes it look like hip hop. What this is with hip hop is everything's down low. It all is in a plie. I think the first thing that you need to know about hip hop, it's all about your posture. And growing up, my posture was really bad. My mom used to tell me all the time, stand up straight, stand up straight. Well, you know what? I was standing up straight. And hip hop is this. 1, 2, 3, 4, hit, and The more relaxed you are, that's what makes it hip hop. This is the first thing I want to say to you. You want to do hip hop? You got to stand like this. In a hip hop head, we have this. Boom, bam, every time. Or Your hands are always like this.
What's your thought on that?
First, I laugh. Well, it's no different than Elvis Presley. It's, white people falling in love with black art form, coming back, presenting from their perspective. I mean, nothing changed. That's all it was to me. She obviously loves hip hop dance, and she's giving her interpretation of it. It's just a white narrative on a black art form. That's all. Nothing new.
There's nothing new.
Nothing new.
One last thing, again, I'm utilizing this as fair uses doctrine. Right before I want to ask you to finish up what you're about to say about the different changes. Again, this is fair uses doctrine. What's your thoughts? Professor.
MT Raps,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dre. That was a cool show. I like Rap City better though.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because Rap City I felt was more legitimate with Fab Five Freddy. And the reason I'm saying that because first MTV didn't even want to play black people's music. They didn't even want to play black faces on there. You know, David Bowie led a pretty much an acknowledgement to how racist MTV was. Mark Goodman and them, they didn't want to play black people's videos. So when they saw that they couldn't stop how hip hop was doing, how big it was blowing up, they just jumped in. You know, if we can't stop them, we'll join them. So they got in and threw them, you know, Dr. Dre, another brother, Ed Lover, and threw them up there. And they said, hey, we want to be in on it too. It's kind of like how rock and roll, any other fad, they just find a way to get in on it. But, you know, it was a popular hip hop show. I didn't really watch it that much. I was more like Rap City. But I do want to give a shout out to Black Swan Records, which was the first black owned and controlled and distributed record label in the whole world. Black Swan Records, big shout out to them back in 1921. I want to make sure I shout out to them.
Okay.
We need more Black Swan Records.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, that's all I got to say about Rap City. You know, I mean, I'm sorry about Yo MTV Raps. I'm more Fab Freddy because I just felt he was more authentic. And I feel, well, I'm not saying Ed Lover and Dr. Dre wouldn't. I'm just saying that their sponsors, MTV, is just not to be trusted. That's all.
Understandable.
You know, well, you know, I'm just saying because they didn't care none, you know, to play Rick James and Prince them at first until, you know, certain white artists started making us think about it. Thank you, David Bowie. You know, then I just don't think they're legitimate. I think that somebody white brings it to their attention that, hey, you guys are pretty racist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you start, now we want to, everybody noticing what we're doing. Now we're going to get on the bandwagon. I don't like that, man. It's not authentic. So
can you go ahead, please, kind of put in that context you were finishing up on your thoughts on what direction that you feel certain parts of hip hop is going to?
Going down, bro.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got drill music now, which is nothing more than how to eliminate black people music. I just think it's fell off, man. It's lost a lot of its creativity. It's lost a lot of its originality. I don't think you have about the talent that you once had in hip hop. And then it's too electronic. And I think electronic is dumbing down. It's too electronic now. And like auto tunes and all that old kind of stuff. I think it's just hurting the music, man. Mm-hmm. I'm just not a big hip hop fan anymore. I'm a hip hop fan of hip hop I grew up with, which really ends in the mid 90s. So, I mean, I just, every now and then you have a J. Cole's, Kendrick Lamar, or, somebody like that come out with something that speaks to the old school hip hop style. And I give them props for that. But overall, man, I'm just not very impressed with most hip hop. I think Eminem was essential in hip hop, and I'm only saying that because Lord Jamar said that Eminem was a guest in hip hop. Well, no, he's not a guest in hip hop. He's better than more than half of the black rappers that have come out. I mean, no, he has a seat at the table, and he had people to pay the way for him, like Malcolm McLaren. He's a new wave dude, but yeah, he had a legitimate seat in hip hop, and again, Blondie, Rapture was the first hip hop record, and whether people admit it or not, it was still a hip hop record, and she was a punk rock artist. He helped put hip hop on the map. So they have a seat at the table, and not only that, they end up being mainly the distributors after the black record labels were kind of fading. We start running to the white record labels, and they start producing their, he started EMI and all these people like Jerry Levine and people like Jerry Heller. So we let them come in as our managers, and we gave them jobs, executives, as our producers, managers, lawyers. So white people have been in hip hop. I can't deny that. We started it. They just not what Ice Cube say. They didn't think they'd cross over. They just came in and did a boss over. So there you go. So, Lord Jamar, I'm sorry, man. No, Eminem not a guest. He's legitimately in hip hop.
See, that's giving some hardcore realities, and I appreciate the time. If Is there, in finishing up on this show, and truly, I hope a lot of people, present time and the future, enjoy this professorship of knowledge from Professor Armstrong. Any finishing words that you like to talk about before we finish up the top podcast here on Black Music?
Well, I just want to say, people go out and study Black music. And when I say go study Black music, learn about Black music across the board. You know, if you didn't listen to jazz, go listen to some jazz. If you don't listen to reggae, go listen to some reggae. You know, I'm talking about Bob Marley type, you know, Steel Pulse. I'm talking about raw roots reggae. You know, UB40's cool. Don't get me wrong. I like them a lot too. But go listen to some raw roots reggae and go check out some jazz and some blues, some authentic jazz and blues from back in the day. You know, learn your music. Go listen to some soul music. Go listen to some rhythm and blues. Go study your music. The more you know, the more you grow.
Mm.
You know.
See, that's power. And
yes,
for the personnel, again, that's listening presently and in the future, Professor Armstrong, again, great books. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the Power of Black Music, and Hip Hop Collectathon, and Anthology of Philosophies, Facts, Opinions, Ideals, Music, Art, History, and Culture from various perspectives. Go take a look at Amazon. Again, the covers themselves is worth the admission to take a look at. And also you can take a look at a glimpse on Amazon inside the book part. So again, I appreciate people listening now and the future, and I appreciate again for you to grace me with your presence and knowledge, Professor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dr. CP. I appreciate it, man, and I'm glad I could come on here and share some information with some folks, man.
Okay,
you know, I just hope people just broaden their tune and just check it out. You know, it's worth. We got a lot of stuff we've done. You know, so the more you know, the more you grow.
All right, so you heard it from the professor. And for personnel, again, present time, you can also, or in the future, you can also listen to a copy on YouTube. Thanks, and I appreciate your time and taking a listen to on the Real CP Show.
Thank you, CP. I appreciate it, brother, and peace and blessings. Thank you so much.
Peace and blessings.